I wanted to do the strategy of a very open format, an open discussion of telling the stories. It just seems that with this COVID-19, it has all of us in the water a lot longer this year than normally. And so a lot of people have embraced the cold water, either in a negative perspective or with a wetsuit on. And we thought it'd be kind of cool as Canadians, because although we love our Americans, we Canadians also need to group together. We need to all start collaborating and sharing information. I'm a firm believer that communities happen because of talk. Firm believer that communities are built through trust and sharing and knowledge. So I think it's important that we start doing that in Canada. So I asked my friends, Nadine Bennett, who lives up in Ottawa, Ontario, Amy Ross, who lives in Collingwood now, I believe, right? You need to unmute yourself, Amy. And then we have also Amy Jones. Oh yeah, so Amy, you're in Collingwood now, right?
Yeah, okay.
And then we have Amy Jones. Are you in Ottawa or Nepean?
Yeah, it's all Barhaven. It's all kind of the same. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then myself, who is in Mississauga. So I swim on Lake Ontario. Nadine and Amy Jones, you swim Ottawa River predominantly or Meech Lake?
Yeah, right now Britannia. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Amy, where are you swimming these days?
South Georgian Bay, Balloon area.
Okay. Okay. Awesome.
Am I choppy?
I can hear you.
I feel like my connection is crap.
So one of the first things I want to just outline before we jump into this, while we all talk about our stories and give out some knowledge and that, is I wanted to outline on this call that we're just sharing our experiences of the Canadians that have done some ice miles and what works for them. And ultimately what works for us may not work actually for you. And you need to kind of gear your training towards what's going to work for you. All of us are very safe swimmers. We believe in the team. We believe in understanding when we're swimming with people, we all know what the goals are of that day. And so I wanted to make sure that we really kind of throw that out there, that it comes down to what you're comfortable with and what you think you're capable of. But I think we all need to reflect that ice swimming and cold water swimming is an endurance sport that needs to be taken seriously because it can be very dangerous. Just adding more people in, and there's two Amy Rosses. Is that, but you're on mute. Okay. So we want to just keep this really in a lighthearted format. I've introduced everyone to the group. Nadine, I'm going to do some screen sharing here so everyone understands here. Screen share. Okay, so what is an ice mile? An ice mile is something that Nadine, Amy and myself have all done. When I say that, there's other people that have also done them in an unratified, without being ratified or sanctioned by the International Ice Swim Association. In Canada, there are 4 people that have, or 5 people that have done the ice miles. One of them is Paul Dunfield. He lives out in BC. He's done 2 official ice miles, one at 4.3 Celsius and one at 4 Celsius. Nadine Bennett's done 3 official ice miles. One of them she did at 4.53 Celsius, which was her longest one at 1.18 miles. And then she's done another 2, one at 3.93 and one at 4.1. But the biggest thing that I think is crazy is that she did one that had a -14 wind chill. Amy has done an ice mile at 1.02 miles at a 4.43 Celsius. Myself, I've done one at a 4.1 Celsius. And then Amy Jones up in Ottawa, she's done an ice mile also. And that also is like crazy when I see wind chills of minus 12.2 Celsius. So starting with Nadine, my Ottawa girl, one of my Ottawa girls. I wanted you to really talk about what prompted you to want to do all those ice miles. Because you went from wanting to do one and then you did 3 in one season, which is really kind of, I think, in the whole world, I think you're the only one that's done that. 3 in one season?
No, I think there's at least 1 or 2 other people, but yeah, it's not as common. And you know, honestly, Kat, you were kind of the one who got the ball rolling with the first one. And I don't think ice miles were really on my radar for a long time. I was really just a cold water swimmer who was enjoying getting better and better at what I was doing. And then we started talking about it more and more. And I think you helped me kind of get the confidence I needed to do one. And then I remember thinking after that first one that I was never going to do another one again because I was so incredibly cold. And then about 4 hours later, I was already planning when I was going to go back and do another one. And the second one felt good. And then I did a third one and that felt good. And yeah, it wasn't something I had planned. It just worked out well and it felt safe and it felt good. So I just kept going.
So what prompted you? What took you from going from a normal water temp of 18, 19 Celsius to want to do 3 Celsius? Like what were you dropped on your head drunk with too much gin? Like what prompted that to go, hey, I think I can do this?
Well, I mean, I've been doing it for about 6 or 7 years now. And if I think back to my early days, it was actually other people who encouraged me to get in the water at times where it was a bit colder. And I remember with my friends, Jen here, I went for a swim with her at about 12 degrees, which these days, you know, doesn't feel as cold as it did back then. But I just remember how amazing it felt. And I just felt more alive in cold water and it was a different experience. I could feel every single movement. I felt stronger and it was quiet and it was just really an amazing experience. I was more aware of everything happening with my body. I love warm water swimming. I love distance swimming, but cold water is a whole other sport. So I kind of see it as complementary, but you know, it's something entirely different. Yeah. So I just love the feeling of moving through that cold water and feeling everything working that way. So yeah, it feels great.
Now on a cold water versus warm water perspective, where are you more happy?
Both. I see them as separate sports altogether. I think warm water, I'm a distance swimmer, so that's a different sport to me entirely, and I train differently for that. And cold water to me is something entirely differently as well. So I see them as just complementary things, but they're different things for me. So right. I don't love one more than the other.
And so how many years were you cold water swimming prior to doing the attempt of an ice mile?
I was 3 years in. And I think that served me well. It gave me a really good base. And so I knew that I didn't want to rush into anything. So I gave myself a couple of years to really work on adaptation and letting myself get better at getting cold and understanding how the recovery worked and all of the different aspects. But really, I was in it for the cold water and the enjoyment. Ice miles weren't really in my mind until, 3 years in when it became kind of possible. So I just enjoyed being a cold water swimmer first. And spent time working on that and getting better at that and then moved into the miles. Yeah.
And what type of training were you doing to get to that?
Well, there was a few things actually that I did that I think might be helpful for others that are considering it. So the great base is one thing. It takes time to let your body adapt properly to that kind of cold. And so, not rushing into an ice mile is a good thing. So I took the time. I just trained, I got to know my body better, got to know how it responded better to cold water. I got used to being uncomfortable, got comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I'd walk the dog in a t-shirt in the middle of the snow. I would make sure I didn't wear gloves when I was driving in the car on the cold steering wheel. Little things like that kind of added up a little bit. But the big thing when I decided to do the ice mile and to start training for it was I looked at the qualifying times and temperatures for the ice mile. So as an example, you have to, and so for those of you that aren't aware, you have to do a qualifying swim before you can do an attempt. And there's a scale that goes down from 10 degrees all the way down to 0 of what your qualifying swim would have to be depending on your water temperature. So I took that scale and I made that scale my training plan. So at 10 degrees, you have to be able to do 3.5 kilometers if that's where you're doing your qualifying swim. And I would swim above that. And so I would just keep swimming above the scale and above the scale. So by the time I got to the ice mile, it was just another training swim. And as you mentioned, I did beyond the 1.6 kilometers. I did the 1.9 and I was able to kind of walk out. I wasn't comfortable. I mean, it was really cold, but I think that helped keep me safe. And I think that was really important. I think the other thing that I did is I recognized that recovery is part of the training. So you're not just training to swim, you're trying to understand the recovery while you're training, and you're training the recovery. So I would challenge myself a little bit more every time. I would let myself just get cold enough, a little bit colder, and a little bit colder, always making sure I stayed within that kind of safety threshold and making sure that I had support to help me. But I would kind of welcome in the chills, the shakes, all of the things that would have come with a mile later on. So I really, you know, you have to start to go through that experience, or it's going to be quite a shock and maybe even a little bit dangerous when you get to a mile. And I think lastly, I just tried to learn from other people to train for the ice mile. I read people's blogs, I talked to people, I asked what worked well. I didn't just talk to people that succeeded, I talked to people that didn't do well or had bad experiences, and I wanted to know why, you know, what happened and what should I think about, what should I plan for. So
Right.
yeah, I just got really into it.
When I was thinking about doing my ice mile, it was kind of funny. I was actually I was with Sarah Thomas when I was starting to think about doing my ice mile, and I kind of went to Sarah and I said, "So how do I train for this ice mile thing?" And she goes, "I've got the person for you to talk to." And she drags me over to Craig Lenning, and he had just jumped off a ship and did like the Bering scene. I was like, and he was like, "Oh." So I'm going to turn this over a little bit over to Amy Ross, who was the second woman there in Canada to do the ice mile. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to share some of your story too of what you did for on a training perspective to build for that. It's kind of neat because all of us who have done them, we're all very different. And we all have different histories in the background of swimming. Like Nadine, you're a pool swimmer, open water swimmer. Amy, you do pool swim and open water swim. And Amy, you've got this natural grace about you. And you also do pool swimming, open water swimming, and I believe also synchronized swimming.
Once upon a time. Before I started actually swimming back and forth, I swam, yeah, upside down.
So, you know, what transitioned you into open water swimming, and what transitioned you, besides your possible craziness of wanting to do cold water? Like,
Craig, my husband, he
yes.
is largely responsible for any extreme weird thing we do in life. And he just convinced me. He had joined swimming with our open water group out of Oakville with Lost the year before I did, because I had a baby that I was taking care of.
Yes.
And he's like, get in the lake. And this was probably in 2013, I think. But it was full on like, okay, I need a wetsuit. I need, you know, all this gear to hop in the lake. So I got all the things, and I was doing that for a few years. We were only swimming like fair weather swimming. We didn't get in until mid-May, and we were out by, you know, Labor Day. And then a few people we swam with were doing crazy crossings of like the channel and just all around the world, right? And you started thinking like, oh wow, like it's possible to do this. And they would show up in, you know, their Speedos and jump in the lake, and we're all geared up. And I was like, oh, maybe it is possible to do this. So then I just sort of challenged myself, like, okay, I'm going to try not putting my wetsuit on today. And then it turned into, okay, let's try to, there was a small group of us. We were like, well, how far into the fall can we swim? Which turned into, hey, let's all go to Vermont and jump in a frozen pool and swim back and forth. And yeah, it just kind of was a very quick transition for me. And then I went from that to the following fall was when I did the ice mile. So it was really quick for me. Unlike Nadine, I didn't have years under my belt, which was not an advantage, I would say. Like Nadine obviously pounded out like 3 ice miles in a month. It was wild. I had a different set of training. I did a lot of Wim Hof breathing at the time too with Craig. It was something else we were exploring. I used that, we climbed a mountain and I used that then. So I just kind of transitioned that into our ice swimming. So I actually had started with like breathing in cold showers before I was in the lake. But once I got in the lake, I loved it. And the key for me, like we lived an hour away from open water at the time, and we had 2 little kids. So it was sort of a juggle. It was, you know, I had to make sure I scheduled time in to do it weekly. And we like to say you ride the thermometer down. You don't just jump in the water in January and have a go, right? So it was the consistency for me, just trying to stick to at least once a week of getting in the lake and going. Timing myself, like cueing, like paying attention to my body cues. Like you can actually feel when your core temperature is starting to drop when you're in the water, and knowing when's enough, when to get out, and being able to track these things to see what worked, what didn't, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we had that discussion actually Saturday morning at Mississauga with 2 people. I think one of them or 2 of them are on the call. I see Martin there, and I know Rochelle came on, but we were talking about the core temperature changing, and where your body goes higher and higher and higher inside. So it almost gives you a false belief that you can go further and further and further, and then suddenly it will just drop down. Could be quite scary. One of the swimmers have never experienced that yet. They haven't felt the inside of their thermostat body going up yet. And I'm really curious to find out. I'm going to ask my a few friends that are doctors to find out why that would happen, why someone hasn't felt that yet. So you mentioned that you hadn't been swimming as long as Nadine. So how many years were you swimming in cold water? Was it 1 full season or 2 full seasons?
Just 1 full season, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your recovery like after you did your ice mile?
It was crap. Honestly, that's why I'm saying, like, I would approach it differently if I were to do another one. I got really sick after. I didn't have shingles, but I felt like I had shingles. Like I was really sick for about a month. It took me to recover. So I'm watching Nadine do these swims. I'm like, holy moly, like how is she doing this? But I think it was almost rushed for me to do it. Like I did it. I was okay. My immediate recovery out of that hypothermic state was okay. But the lingering side effects of it, of like fighting a cold and this kind of thing for a while. So it took me a while. So yeah, I think Nadine's backing of more like exposure, long-term, like, you know, exposure leading up to it was probably very beneficial.
Well, Nadine, you had one bad recovery, did you not? Did you have one?
Yeah, and I think it's important to share not only good stuff, but stuff that doesn't go quite so well. And we can laugh about it now, but I had this experience, and a lot of people don't realize that the second ice mile that I did was with Kat, actually, and on the same morning, and it was really special. Yeah. So, but it's kind of interesting because it was a different lake, and the lake moved. And where we swim here in Ottawa, the water doesn't move, it's very still. So I got a bit colder than what I had thought. And I was fine, but I just noticed it right away because, you know, these waves are rolling across my body. And I went to get out, and I was feeling pretty good. I walked ashore, and I stopped about 2 feet away from shore, and I looked down, and there's pebbles, not little rocks by the shoreline. And I just kind of stopped about 2 feet out, and I was done. And I stared down at them, and I remember thinking, oh, I'm trapped in Lake Ontario for the rest of my life. I'm going to be here forever. My husband's going to be so mad that I can't come home. I'll never see my dog again. This is all happening in about 30 to 40 seconds, I guess. And then they realized that I just couldn't get past it. But it makes sense when you think about it, because when we train here in super cold water, moving water, the shoreline where we train in one of the areas has a lot of algae on the rocks. So in my mind, if I stepped on those rocks, I was going to fall. Right. I guess the point is you're not really totally there anymore, and you have to understand how that feels, and you need the right support on the shore to pull you out. So someone had to come in 2 feet into Lake Ontario and help me out of, you know, or I would have been trapped there forever. So.
Yes, Brian walked in and said, "You step over the rock, Nadine."
I couldn't do it.
So she stepped over the rock. So Amy Jones is up there. You're the most recent person in Canada to do the ice mile, which is, I haven't really had, I don't think I've seen you since you've done it.
I think, yeah, we were at the Winter Festival. Were you at the last Winter Festival?
No.
In Vermont? Oh, okay, no, then no, I haven't.
Right, I couldn't go. So congratulations, even though it was from last season, because I haven't had a chance to see you, so that's great. What drove you to do it?
Actually, I was thinking about this a lot, and I think it was a series of events and experiences that led to developing the drive to do it and making the decision to do it. I only actually started marathon swimming in 2017. I just decided I want to do a 10K open water. I was mainly a pool swimmer before and a big CrossFit enthusiast, so like to lift a lot of heavy weights. And so I met Nadine through registering for King Wolf. So through that, that's what took it off. I met Nadine and Diane and Jen, and they were telling me about this cold water swimming. And I was like, why would you do that? I think that's insane. And they're like, well, why don't you just come with us and just, see how long in the season you can go? So I was like, okay. I ended up loving it. It was so uplifting. It feels so good on your muscles, especially after doing gym workouts. So I think for me, that was a big part in just getting me into it. So I followed Nadine and Jen to the Winter Festival in Vermont in 2018. I was very cautious. So I signed up for just a few. I remember my first 25-meter race. I thought I was going to drown. I didn't think I was going to make it to the end because I just decided to sprint. And I did not know what that felt like. And then I realized, do not sprint in cold water. So I figured out to slow it down. And from there, I just kept acclimatizing.
Did you?
And just kept going with Nadine and them. Pardon?
You froze for a second, sorry.
Sorry, what did you say? Oh, okay. Yeah, and actually not long after the Winter Festival, I had broke my wrist. So that season was a little bit of, a drag, but I still swam. I got a cast that I could still swim in. I still went to the gym. I still did a Spartan race. I was back to doing wall handstands in September. And then I continued to train with Nadine and Jen and Diane to just keep getting acclimatized to the water. And that was the year that Nadine had done, that I had been there with her for her ice mile. So I think that was a big part in, seeing that she had done it. And I think that's when I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, I wonder if I could do that. I know I'm not ready yet, but we'll see. And then the next Winter Festival, I signed up for everything, including the 200-meter. So once I realized I could do that, I started thinking about it even more. I trained a lot harder to do the 10-mile swim, open water swim in Vermont.
I was there for the finish line.
Yes, you were, yes. And then the next day with me and my T-Rex arms trying to drive home. But yeah, so I think, all that work and the events led me up to that, up to the decision that, this is something I think I can do. And secondary to that, you had done one, Amy Ross had done one. And, I had the chance to be the 5th Canadian to have done an ice mile. So that was another thing that was exciting to me to achieve. And on top of this, I had all the support of my swimming friends. So Nadine, Diane and Jen and Derek and Tom and my husband, Matt, my dear friends that I work out with on Saturday mornings, Noreen and Carolyn and Lisa, and people that I had told at work and at my gym and my family, that this is something I wanted to do, and just talking about it and stuff would just get me more and more excited about doing it.
That's great. Do you have any advice for any new swimmers?
I would say definitely take your time. And, like what Nadine and Amy were both saying, you really need to listen to your body. Everyone's going to react to it differently. Going even to the winter festivals, there'd be some people that, it didn't really affect their fingers or, as much. And other people, it was like, oh, their lungs, and for me, like, I had found that I needed to slow things down quite a bit. So I think everybody's different. You can't, like you said at the beginning of this, what works for one person isn't going to work for everybody else. So you need to spend that time to find out how you react and what your after drop's going to be like. and to know that, you know, it might be different, you know, just because you've experienced or you think you know your limits, you know, the environment can change, you know, different wind chill, different conditions, you know, it's always going to be a new experience. So really know your body before you get into something like that.
Same question, Amy Ross. Any advice for new swimmers?
Yes. I was just staring at Amy's painting because someone commented on how nice it was.
My friend Carolyn Elshoff painted that. She's amazing.
Amazing. Anyways, advice is have a plan, definitely, a training plan, and then like a day of plan. And I know, Kat, you were huge on this too. Because you're working with, when you do an official, like we talk about sanctioned ice miles, like actual through the International Ice Swimming Association, there's steps you have to follow. Like Nadine mentioned, you have to do the qualifying swim. Well, you also have to get an ECG and doctor's approval, and you have, there's all these things, this checklist you have to go through before you're even allowed to like you can swim it, but it's not gonna count, right? So make sure you have all your ducks in a row, and then you need a support, like on water and shore support, and you need to trust those people literally with your life. So you need to know who is watching you and who is timing you, and just plan everything out, because when you get in the water to do your ice mile, you only want to be thinking about what's going on in here and what's happening with your body. You don't want to have to worry about what the dude with the thermometer is doing and what the guy with the stopwatch is doing, and you just want to know that you are swimming from here to there, or whatever your course is, to hit the nautical British mile, not just 1,500 meters. And that's all you want to concentrate on is yourself. So you need to, like, it's a very independent thing doing an ice mile, but at the same time, it is a team thing, because you need to have those people there, and you need to know that they know what they're doing and exactly when they start their stopwatch, and where the start and end points are. If you're doing laps, how many laps, and where you're going when you get out of the water, because your brain at some point just stops firing on all cylinders, and you need other people to make decisions for you, or undress you, or get you to that warm car. And yeah, so have everything pre-established.
Right.
Exit plan.
Yeah. Now, we know everyone on this call is not striving to do an ice mile like the crazy women on this call that have done, and some of them more than one. But we know that a lot of people on this call are now, they're dipping into those lakes that are, you know, dropping down, and the temperature is going down right now. I think my lake right now, when I was swimming on Saturday, was 7.9 Celsius. I don't know what your lake is, Nadine. So rather, we're going to take your question of any advice for new swimmers. Let's gear that towards not people doing an ice mile, but let's gear for people that are starting out. Any advice for them?
Well, I think Amy Ross said it, you know, go down the thermometer. It's really important to not jump in January and think you're going to be awesome at this. It's actually kind of, you know, it could be potentially kind of dangerous. I mean, people have done it, but it's just not really the way you want to approach it. So I think going down the thermometer makes a lot of sense. And I think I've mentioned as well on the call that staying within that threshold is really important, that safety threshold. But somebody asked me, well, how do I know what my safety threshold is? And I said, well, you can only figure that out yourself by getting in. And I've had swims where I've gone past that threshold and felt really sick, sitting in my car. And that's where I realized, like, I've got to test it to know my threshold, and I'm not willing to go beyond that threshold. So the only way to know how your body responds is to get in there and to try it, and to push yourself just enough that you're not going to be at risk, but that you learn to adapt a little bit, or just dip and have fun. It doesn't have to be a training thing. It can just be a social swim with your friends, to get out in the sunshine and swim open water year round and have a great time. So just look at your goals and figure out what you really want to do, and just above all, have a good time with it. Because if you're just training single-mindedly for something because it's a singular goal and you're not even enjoying yourself, you know, why would anybody want to do that, especially not in really cold water? So yeah, just enjoy it, ride the thermometer down, stay safe, make sure it's always good, and no swim is ever bad in that case. So.
Right. So we actually, well, I met Amy Ross through Lost Swimming Lake Ontario Swim Team in Oakville. And then Nadine, I met you in Vermont. Same with Amy Jones, I've met you in Vermont for the winter swim, which I see a few people, like I see Joseph online, he goes down to Vermont also. Tom, I think, went to Vermont this past year also. And there's a few people there. Who of the three of you want to talk about what Vermont is, and could we maybe somehow, maybe, I would love to see Vermont. Well, Vermont to me is a province of Canada, but I would love to be able to see an event up in Canada very similar to Vermont, but most of these people on this call have no clue what Vermont is, with the exception of a state. So who wants to, oh, the picture right there behind you, yes. Which one of you three want to talk about Vermont and what you do there? Because it's not an ice mile, it's just someone want to describe it? Nadine, Amy?
The funnest event ever, but go ahead.
It's like an ice swimming festival, I guess you could say, in Vermont, in Lake Memphremagog. They essentially saw with like chainsaws, 2-lane, 25-meter pool, like you can see behind Nadine in the picture there. And they have races over the course of a weekend. And they're awesome. They range from what, 200 to 400. Did they put a longer event in?
It goes to 400, doesn't it?
400?
Two.
Yeah.
200.
Oh, now. Okay, yeah. And it's fun. And, you know, it's a great introduction to ice swimming. You know, like I had no intention of doing an ice mile when we went to Vermont the first time. It's fun. And you learn, like Amy was saying, like how to race in cold water and the regulations, because you're not allowed to dive in and put your head underwater. Like there's different starting techniques. So it's not the same as swimming, like racing normally in a pool. It's not your classic open water race. It's very different. And the community you meet there is amazing. You meet people from the world, just amazing, incredible personalities. And that is, I think, when for most of us Canadian women, that really, I'll go out on a limb here and say that's when the seed of the ice mile was planted in my head, and I think Kat's head. We realized only one person had done an ice mile in Canada. This was what, 3 years ago? And we were like, wait a minute, we live in Canada and only one person's done an ice mile. And it was a guy.
Well, Lauren King Lauren King is an amazing swimmer, man out in Hamilton. He's done the English Channel, done Lake Ontario. And he mentioned once, he goes, I feel humbled by these three women who all kicked off, because at that time Amy Jones hadn't done the ice mile yet, but he was humbled by these three women that just like blew out ice miles in one season and put Canada on the map, which was what the drive was for me, because I hated that there was no women on the map that had done an ice mile yet. So that, yeah, but I kind of found my passion by just for the hell of it going to Vermont once just to see what it was like, and it was quite the social gathering. And you do 25-meter, 50-meter, 100-meter, and 200-meter in butterfly, breaststroke, and freestyle, but not backstroke. Amy's husband actually holds the record for butterfly, I think, still.
I think he's scared.
What was that?
I think he scared people. He's just a fast swimmer that became an ice swimmer for 4 months.
He has a wingspan that's just, which is crazy. It was amazing. Sorry, I started thinking about that because I remember being screaming so loud at that event. It was absolutely crazy. Nadine, you wanted to touch base on where you would like to see the sport go.
Well, I think we've talked about a lot of really great stuff here. I think the one thing I would like to see is more of this first. And thank you, Kat, for putting this together. I think you kind of hit it home when you said that more and more people are getting out there and trying it, especially with what's going on in the world today. But I also would like to see people sharing the things that don't work. What I've noticed is that we're really big on sharing and celebrating the successes, but I know that's not always the case, and those aren't my stories to share, but I wish that we had a great forum where people can say, look, I tried something, I succeeded, but it was really hard for me, and not be afraid to share stuff that didn't work well. And I think the more the sport kind of becomes more common and the more cold water swimming become common, I hope that people are supportive of one another and create that space where people can talk about, things that didn't necessarily go well, because that's how you learn. That's the only way you learn for, other people. I went and I looked for people that had a hard time with it. That's what I wanted to know about.
Right.
So I just hope that, we do more of this. We talk more. The Canadian Cold Water Swimming Group is a really great Facebook page. We have forums like this, and then we just share good things and bad things. I think that's important.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of strength when people admit that they may have not done something the right way, and if they have just going to redo it, they would do it a different way. For me, I actually didn't qualify the first time we were short on distance. So I had to go back into the water and re-qualify for it. And my qualifying was actually colder water than my actual mile. I can't remember what the temp was. I'm really bad with keeping stats about myself, but I actually swam a kilometer in colder water than my actual mile. And it was hard for me because I'm used to succeeding on the first time. And for me to have to redo it, it really took me it was like egg on my face, so to speak. I'm very fortunate. I'm very, very, very lucky. I have a couple of friends that will just drop anything and just help me do whatever I want to do. Well, that's crazy, but it's reciprocated because I help them. They'll say they want to do a 300K bike ride. Kat, can you come? Yeah, sure, no problem. And I'll be there, in charge of the reels and stuff like that. So it's a very reciprocated relationship on both aspects. For me, I also, to touch base of what Amy Ross was talking about, which is so key when you're doing these colder swims, whether it be just for 10 minutes or whether it be just for 30 minutes, that you all keep an eye on each other and that you're swimming in a group. So when I'm swimming like on a Saturday morning with a couple of people, I'm literally watching every swimmer as I'm doing it. Maybe that's my old lifeguard in me. I'm keeping an eye on everyone to make sure everyone's really safe, because cold water swimming is serious stuff. There's so many different elements that can occur with the hypothermia and things like that. And my kayaker, a dear friend of mine, Mike Morton, he knows my stroke count. He knows if he can tell if I'm slowing down, and I give him complete control of any of my swims, whether they be an ice mile or a marathon swim. He gets to tell me if I'm getting out. And he pulled me on one of them. I was actually doing, I had to do my ice qualifier twice because I didn't do enough distance. So the first time we shorted the map by accident, which circles back to Amy Ross saying, make sure you have your plan in place. And then on my ice mile attempt, it took me twice because Mike said I probably could have done it, but he wasn't comfortable with it. He saw my stroke count going down, and he's used to a certain stroke count. The second mile, which was successful, and I actually, and I apologize if I get emotional when I say this, I contribute Nadine actually being there that helped me succeed, because she's very important to me. And we literally passed each other in the water at one point and saw each other. It was a really cool experience. But I actually remember in my ice mile looking up and seeing Mike beside me, and he was just a big, and people who know Mike will understand what I'm about to say, he was just a big furry man in a kayak, and I didn't know who he was. I looked up at him and he said, put your head in the water and swim. And I literally thought in my brain, furry man told me to swim. So I started swimming 300 meters. And I actually had an amazing recovery. Like, it was kind of like weird. Like, I walked out on my own. Brian offered to help me, but I really didn't need any help. I stepped over the rock without thinking it was Mount Everest. And then I think probably the most shocking thing that happened for me on my ice mile was more shocking for Nadine than for me, because she got to see me naked in the parking lot as they because, and that's something that we really didn't touch base on this call. We may want to touch base on this now, is the rewarming process. So Amy Jones, you've been a little bit quiet. What's your rewarming process?
For me, do you mean specifically for the ice mile or just in general?
Yeah, just your rewarming process for people that are just cold water swimming. What do you have? Do you lay things out on a rock before you actually start the swim?
Yeah, so actually I bring a little pop-up tent. So I put a blanket down as the base because the ground can be really cold when you get out. So I make sure I have my clothes out and accessible, ready to get as soon as I come in. I have a dry robe. If you don't have one, they're the greatest things ever. They completely block the wind out. So when I get out of the water, the first thing I get into the tent, get the suit off, get dry, get warm clothes on, and get layers on. I leave my cap on and my goggles on my head and my earplugs until I'm completely done dressing and get my dry robe back on. And it makes a huge difference. If I can get changed within like 5 minutes, I start rewarming again, then I can take my swim cap off and put a real hat on. And I get some tea. Have a tea, and maybe bring a snack with you as well, in case you feel a little nauseous or if you're not sure, just have something on hand. But definitely warm liquids too is a good idea.
What about you, Nadine? Rewarm plan?
Well, I don't know if anybody should do what I do. I used to be nice and organized, like Amy just described. I put my tent up, I'd get dressed, but these days I throw my jacket. I don't have a dry robe. I have a surf fur, very similar, but it's big, heavy, windproof coat, and I throw it on and I run to the car. But she makes a lot of good points because you have to plan it. That's kind of the whole point. You need to have a space where you can get dressed that isn't exposed to the cold. So her tent works really well, and you just have your clothes laid out. So generally for cold water swimming, I mean, that's what you should be doing, is setting up some sort of system by which you can get rewarmed as quickly as possible. The ice miles were a little bit different. I really underestimated what was needed, and I had a lot of friends help. So Amy was there, Amy Jones was there, we had Tom there, Diane was there, and I had a friend, Julie, who thank goodness had her vehicle. And so you need, like, for a longer swim, you need to be able to get to a warmer space. And she wrapped a great big blanket around me, and then she just gave me a huge bear hug while I just shook. So it kind of depends on where that spectrum is, but definitely know what you're doing and have a system for afterwards that you've practiced every time that you go to the shore. Set up my little tent, I lay out my clothes, I make sure they're not inside out because otherwise I'm going to be, naked. And it was not, it's happened more than once that I've had to ask for help. I've gotten trapped in my own clothing before, as Amy can tell you. So yeah.
What about you, Amy Ross?
I have come to realize through experience that I do not like changing on the shore. I feel like it's time wasted for me personally, because especially when it's like -15 out. So if you run into me after a swim, I will be wearing snow pants and a parka with nothing underneath. Like I just strip naked under my parka and pop on a pair of snow pants and my coat. And I've even been known to wear like barefoot with Birkenstocks or Crocs or whatever boots, like those big sloppy Canadian Tire winter boots, and just drive home in that. And then I just basically try to get home. I always have a warm tea to drink. I feel like it helps to warm from the inside out, but I'm sure a lot of you already cold water swimming, so you've probably figured that much out, that a warm drink helps. Although one of you, is it Amy or Nadine, likes ice cream after?
Not
ice cream after? Not me.
Not me.
Oh, I thought one of you guys used to go, okay, maybe it's someone else I'm thinking of that used to go on.
I mean, I like ice cream, but not after a cold swim.
That's funny. Yeah, that's funny.
A while, because like
I generally, for my warm up, I actually brought sweatpants down this past weekend. I was actually struggling getting them on. I'm kind of with you, Amy. I don't like changing on the beach. And I've gone home many, many times with my bathing suit and my dry robe. And just hop in the Jeep and go home. And I'm quite happy with doing that. But as soon as I get home, but mental note though, I live 5 minutes from the beach. So it's not like I'm driving a half an hour. I literally drive up Jack Darling parking lot, make a left, and I'm home within 5 minutes. So Nadine knows because she rolled in the back of an SUV with me naked after our ice mount.
Yeah, it was an experience. Yeah.
That was funny. um, so we have about 10 minutes left. Is there anyone on this call with the raise of a hand or unmute or for some reason I'm not seeing my chat working, so I'm not sure if anyone else is seeing a chat. Have any questions? No? I don't see. Oh, there's the chat. There's my chat now. You have a question? I asked you to.
Yeah.
There.
Oops.
There you go.
Yeah, my question is like as a beginner, is it better to begin with a wetsuit or just begin like in a bathing suit and do a bit like just as much as I can like and build up?
That's a
So
really
I'm
good
not really.
question. So all of us, like Amy, Nadine, and I, we all swim naked when we swim. So just a swimsuit. I actually originally started with a wetsuit when I was doing triathlons, and I learned to hate the wetsuit. I just I just hated it. Even when I was doing a triathlon, the amount of seconds it would shave to remove a wetsuit for buoyancy, I really didn't need it. So I stopped. Did you ever swim with a wetsuit, anyone? Nadine?
I tried to when I first started out with Nadine and Diane up at Meech Lake. I wore it twice and I had to take it off. I overheated.
Okay.
I didn't like it.
I find it hard to get out of a wetsuit when you're cold, and your body actually adapts differently. Because you have to think when you're fully immersed naked, like just wearing a bathing suit in the cold water, your core is adapting, like because you're all one temperature. Whereas when you have a wetsuit on, whether it's full leg, half leg, whatever it is, or arm, whatever, I can't talk. Your extremities are experiencing a different temperature than your core, so your body won't really adapt to the cold the same way as if you're completely just in your suit. That said, I do sometimes wear booties, like thin nitrile booties and gloves. If I want to get a longer swim in the cold, I'll put those on only because I have very sensitive fingers and toes. Some people, it doesn't bother them at all. Me, it does. So I kind of alternate swims. I'm always just in my bathing suit, but some days you'll see me and I'll have gloves and booties on. Some days I'll have just nothing on, just a bathing suit. So yeah.
And what about as a cap?
What do I wear as a cap?
Like neoprene
I just wear a neoprene or silicone cap, whatever I have around my, or not neoprene, sorry,
Silicone.
Silicone, yeah, not neoprene, no.
If you're going
actual ice mile, you're not allowed to wear any neoprene on your head, any neoprene at all. But if you want, like I said, if you're training, you can wear it occasionally, but I wouldn't get in the habit of wearing neoprene every swim.
Right. So I see a couple questions here, and thank you, Amy, for that. I see a couple questions here in the group. One of them is, where is the ice mile done? Who would like to answer that? Amy or Nadine, who wants to take it?
Anywhere you want it to be.
Yes.
Yeah,
So the ice mile is very, it's a personal swim. You're swimming with your team in your lake, in your body of water, with your team under the regulations of the International Ice Swimming Association, which I co-chair with for the Canadian side. We can put that link up in the Canadian Cold Water Group on how to access that, but really it's up to you where you're doing that. I see another question here is actually a really good question, and I think we need to answer this. Are earplugs a necessity? Nadine?
For me, absolutely. I would say probably, I'm assuming for all of us, absolutely. There's a couple of reasons. One is cold water getting into your eardrum, your inner ear, can really throw off your balance. For me, it makes me nauseated. And when I'm nauseated in cold water, I don't really know where I am anymore. And it happens really quickly. I'd have to stand up right away and kind of right myself. And I find once it gets in there, then I'm kind of done for a bit. But also, I think with repeated exposure to cold in your ear, you can get surfer's ear, which is basically, I think it's a sort of the cartilage and bone moving closer together. And I don't know very much about it, but I know I should avoid it. So for me, earplugs are a necessity. I have them by the box full, and they're always in my kit bag. So absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I see Nicholas has a question. Are you able to swim outside Canada? I'm not quite sure if I understand that question. If you're asking about whether or not you can do an ice mile outside of Canada, yes, absolutely. And if you're looking at doing one in a specific country, my recommendation would be go to the International Ice Swimming Association website and look at people that have done ice miles and then reach out for them on social media in that country. And if you need any help with that, I can certainly point you in a direction. To people in a specific country.
I am curious. Sorry, Catherine. Do you listen? Hello, Nadine.
Hi.
Yes, and Louise. Hello, Louise. I saw you in Newport, but my question is actually due to the COVID-19. Are you able to swim outside? Are you going to Newport or somewhere?
No, I can answer that. I think at this point, I don't think anybody really knows. And I think, at least for me personally, and I know other swimmers feel the same way, with everything that's happening right now, we're still out and swimming, but we're exercising a bit more caution than we would in other years, because we don't want to be putting ourselves, you know, in the path of first responders. I'm just gonna be really frank with you. We don't want to be causing any sort of unnecessary burden on the health system, but that doesn't mean we're not swimming. We are swimming. We're just being a little bit more careful. It's hard to say if any organized events are going to happen this winter.
Sorry, Nadine. Sorry, you speak too fast for me. It's not my mother language, eh? English.
My French isn't that great either.
Okay.
But Nicholas, it's too early to know if there's organized events. Okay, it's too early to know.
Nobody here plans to go in US, for example.
We can't. Yeah, right now with the border closure, I don't think there's any plans to do anything like that.
Okay.
And it's probably just wise to stay home right now in your home country and do what you can locally. Yeah. Get out and swim and be healthy. But I don't think that those things, at least for the time being, it's probably off of the radar.
We have another really good question here from Christopher. And it pertains to water temp, and we had this discussion the past couple of weeks too on water temp. I've been swimming each weekend near Ottawa between 9 and 10 Celsius. What's the difference between that and 5 in your experience? And so that's it's how can I explain? I'm going to try to explain this. So you swim 20 and it drops down to 18, you really don't feel it. You're swimming at 17 and it drops down to 15, you're starting to feel it. It goes from 15 down to 11, it's a noticeable difference. 11 to 9, you start to feel it. And then once it hits probably about 7, every time it goes down by half a degree, you feel it more and more and more. And when it's 5 degrees down to 4 degrees Celsius, it's just someone throw some words out there to describe how that is. Nice.
I can add a bit of content to that, because Chris and I have messaged a little bit about cold water swimming. And Chris, for me, like, I find from 10 degrees downwards, every degree or 2, maybe every, I think every degree is a different swim for me. So I'm different in 10 degrees or 9 degrees than I am at 5. I'm a different swimmer. My abilities are different. My ability to swim gracefully changes significantly. My tolerance to the cold, my mind process, everything is different. So when we train going down the thermometer, for me, about 12 degrees downwards, I start to consider every swim as being a very different thing. And I just start to really be hyper vigilant about what those differences are.
Right. And then we have another question here, which is also a really good one. Does any of the ice milers experience long-term effects on their hands? So Amy Ross, you already touched base with it a little bit, that you're hypersensitive with your fingers. I'm finding I'm getting like that myself too. And I tried to swim with paddle gloves the other week and that didn't work. So that was an epic failure. So I may be getting some gloves like you're talking about. I personally, 3 years ago or 2 years ago, maybe it was 3 years ago, I actually lost the sensation of my fingertips for about 12 weeks, and then it came back. Has anyone else experienced that in this group?
Yeah, short term.
Short
For
term.
sure. Yeah, I especially after the winter festival in Vermont, because usually the water temperature is below zero then. And then that walk back to the house to get warm, yeah, for weeks after that, they're usually pretty cold.
Is that what we're calling it, a house? It's a bar, come on.
Or, yeah, the one across from the bar.
It's the bar.
Dad only remembers
We
the
have
bar.
here. I'm just looking to see if there's any more questions here. I don't see any, really.
Yes, I have one.
Okay, go ahead, Nicholas.
Yeah. My first experience was last year in Magog. You remember? It was very frozen for me, but very funny too. And this year I plan to swim once a week at least in cold water. I don't know if you're, I know in Quebec it's not the same river than in Ontario or than in Vancouver or outside. You know, it's very, 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 last week it was very cold and I swim in 5 degrees Celsius. And I'm wondering how you do that, how you plan your swim. Do you plan once a week until you are not able to swim, or what's your suggestion? My plan is to try to swim once a week until I'm not able to swim, and I hope to see ice and broke the ice just for fun and picture. And but how do you do that?
So Nadine touched a little bit of that in the beginning of training. So I don't know, Nadine, if you want to repeat a little bit about that in a summarized version of what you were doing for training. Me, I can keep it really simple. I was swimming twice a week in the lake, and then I was doing cold showers almost every day. I still do cold showers every day. I think Amy Ross, you're a big cold shower girl, family, right? Yeah.
I also
Yeah. And Nadine, what were you doing for training?
I think we were going just once a week. We would try to go both days on the weekend, but the weekend was the only time that we could go, and that was still really good. We just planned a really good swim. During the week, I couldn't swim, but I would do other things. I would, like I said, try to make myself cold outside in the winter. I would just keep going, and Nicholas, to answer your question, we just keep going until it freezes over, and even then we hunt for open water in other areas of the province here, so we don't really stop, but that's because that's what we're comfortable with. So
you know, I saw the difference between last year, because last year when I did the test before to swim in Magog, it was you have to swim 1 minute in less than 4 degrees. It was I did that 4 times before to do all the 1 minute, okay, and my last video, you saw it perhaps. I don't take hot cold shower. I hate to take a cold shower, and my friends told me. Now my friends in France told me, no, you have to go straight in the water. And since that time, my adaptation is very, very, very better. It's very better, because I go now, like in the video, I go straight in the water. I don't think about what's happened. I go straight, and after that I can think what's happened, and I go slowly first. It depends of the temperature, but it was 5 degrees Celsius last time. And in the river I swam at 8 degrees Celsius around 15 minutes. I think it's each time it's better than the last time. And my strategy is to swim at least once a week. But you know, I swim in the pool and I swim in lake. And the difference between the pool and the lake, when I'm going to swim in lake and I come back in pool, it takes to me around 2-3 days with no arm pains, no muscles, very strong. And after that, to I don't know in English, but to récupérer, you feel my body and my muscles very easy. I don't know in English.
Nadine, do you have anything to add to that at all, or?
Pardon?
I think like Nicholas and I have talked on Facebook because we follow each other's swims, and I think he's right. The more that you get in and try different things, because what works for Nicholas might not work for me or for
Exactly.
Amy or for the other Amy, but the more you do what works for you, the more you will adapt. So you're right, Nicholas, you're adapting, and you'll feel different at different temperatures. And I think that's a good thing. As long as you're happy with what you're doing, that's all that really matters.
Great. Okay, so we're past 9 o'clock, and I'm a big believer in hard stops and not running over time, because we all have family. Amy Jones, any last words of advice?
Keep it fun. You want to do it for me, there's so many benefits to cold water and ice water swimming, for mood, for physical fitness, for therapeutic, sorry for your I can't talk either now, it's too late. Therapy for your muscles, and keep it fun, keep it safe. Always make sure you guys have all touched base on it before, but make sure everyone's aware of what you're doing, and stay together.
Yeah. Same question, Amy Ross. Any last words?
Just don't be afraid to reach out within our group for advice,
Yeah.
especially if you qualifying swims or, swim, no pun intended, through all the like technicalities of section 13.1.2 of the IISA, that kind of thing. Don't be afraid to ask us or ask someone who's gone through it already questions, because you can save yourself a whole lot of time and know that you're doing it right.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Nadine?
I think the one thing we haven't really talked about is thanking your support, because, we've mentioned a few people we all have on this call, but, if it wasn't for the people that were cheering you on or dressing you when you're incapacitated, we wouldn't be safe and we wouldn't be having as much fun laughing in the water together. And so you really have to look at those moments and remember that that's what's important, above all. And just, thank people that help you, because without them, this wouldn't be nearly as much fun. It really
Exactly.
wouldn't.
Yeah, and that rolls over to all swimming. Whether it be a 10K swim in the water, when you have that support, or the shore support from the cold water swimming, they're just so amazing, because they're taking time out of their day to let and help crazy asses like all of us do nutty things. And that's just awesome when you have that type of support. So we need to all show some gratitude, definitely, to the volunteers. So just to finish this up, I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming onto this call. I think with the COVID-19 and everyone's extending their water season so much longer into the open water, it was important to start triggering some conversations amongst the group. And to Amy Ross's, what she was saying about, feel free, ask us questions. If you just drop it into Canadian Cold Waters, because I bet you your question is also in the back of someone else's mind and they would like to know too. So drop it in the form on the page, and we'll certainly do our best to give different perspectives. And that's all I have. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If maybe Nadine and Amy could just stay on as everyone else drops off, that would be wonderful.
We're not in trouble, are we?
No, you're not in trouble, dear.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Have a good night, everybody.
Okay.